What is up, maniacs? Welcome to WMMAnia. This is episode 42. I'm your host, as always, Drake Riggs, here to bring you the latest and greatest in the world of mixed martial arts when it comes to the ladies specifically. My goodness, we have another relatively solid lineup for you guys. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. We keep it real around here, as you know. Unless you're here for the first time, then we appreciate you tuning in. You can visit MMA Mania for all your MMA needs, of course, and hit that like, share, and subscribe, notification bell, do all that good stuff. Really helps out a whole bunch. At least a like button, we would really appreciate that. But anyway, to cut my own self off there, as for the lineup today, we will be recapping Bellator 289, which went down this past Friday. The last, I guess you could say, Bellator show. I mean, Rise at 40 coming up at the end of the year is technically, obviously, a Ryzen show, but obviously Bellator is going to be a part of that. Bellator fighters anyway, but the last standalone Bellator card of the year, Bellator 289, went down. We have some news. Just a handful of fights, kind of been the norm these days. It's just a fight or two getting announced. I mean, we did have a full card for an event, so we will get into that, of course. And then just one fight to preview as well. So yeah, actually not too much going on this week, especially as the year is dwindling down. That leaves us with less to talk about, as always, as UFC Vegas 66 is the last UFC card of the week too. So this is kind of gets to that point in the year where after today's show, I think going forward, we're probably going to have kind of some strictly Q&A based episodes as we get ready for the year-end awards and everything, which will go down in January, the first week of January, because I'm not one of those shows, or I'm not one of those guys who does the awards before the year is over, because why would you do that? It's about the whole year, right? Get the whole calendar in there. Don't cut out, especially the best card of the year, perhaps, potentially on paper. Can't wait to see how it goes down, Ryzen 40, of course, but that is rather here nor there just yet. We will not be talking about that too in depth today, unless you guys want to, because, of course, this is a partially viewer-driven show. Love the engagement here. Obviously, last week got screwed up a bit by my own scheduling conflicts, but we were here at the normal time today, so I could see we got some people tuning in live, unlike last week where it was I was just kind of all by myself, which we made it through, but it was definitely, it's always going to be a shorter show. If the less engagement, the slower the show goes on. So it is driven by you guys for the most part, and I appreciate you all so much, whether you are new or a recurring viewer, for finding some interest in what we're doing here over at MMA Mania always. So yeah, for sure. Barton is here, says you and Chris Presnell should do more stuff together. I really enjoyed the fight companion you did at SCMP. Well, appreciate that, Barton. Yeah, Chris is now my fellow Pacific Northwesterner. He is here in the same area as I am. So it's kind of funny how, you're making me think right there on the spot, Barton. I mean, we could easily do some in-person kind of stuff. Maybe for if he's able to do the next fight, whatever one or whatever thing that we end up doing at SCMP, maybe we can join in the same room. I mean, we'd have to kind of figure out the setup there with the microphones and everything, but that could be fun. I mean, I wouldn't mind hanging out in person with him and all that, but yeah, we'll see how that goes. Chris is a good dude for sure. Check him out, MMA Ecosystem on Instagram. Let's see. What do we got here? Jin says, what do I think of the narrative of Whaley haters saying that if Carla is prepared properly, she beats Whaley? I mean, do you even need, these are questions, you guys always ask these questions that you clearly know the answers to, like that. There's no even point in addressing that one. Appreciate you all the same, as always, you guys, but I mean, you know what it is. You answered your own question there. Spart says, do you know how the World MMA Awards work? I think Valentina is one of the best fighters ever, but her only fight this year was where she arguably lost and headbutted Santos. So Spart, they're fan voted. That's all you need to know. The fans vote on them. So whenever there's fan voting involved, can generally be popularity contest. Obviously, I don't remember who all was nominated this year. I'm really glad though. I will say this: I've always gave the World MMA Awards shit because they do them. They used to do them like at terrible times, like middle of the year, and then it would be like combining things from the current year and last year, like always annoying. And they still did that for this one, even though it was in December. So yeah, I'm glad that they were later this year, but they still all award shows need to be done in January. Okay, that's essentially what I'm getting at. That is what we've always done here with this show, whether it is. Well, I mean, this will be our first MMA Mania version of the show, doing awards. But yeah, and in terms of fan voting, I think maybe it's good to get a balance of like both people for the outlet, and then I mean, I'd like to hear what the fans say too. But obviously, like I said, it's something like that. It's pretty popularity based, of course, but that's how they work. Specifically, Spartan says also, why is JHK so rude? I corrected him about GMO and he yelled and said that what I told him was what he said. Is he insecure when people call him out? No, I didn't think so. See, I didn't think it was that not that much of an explosion. I didn't think, but he's been called out for um, reactions, I guess, in the past. But no, it definitely was not something he was serious about. I don't know. I can't speak for him. Yes. But Rio, right now we're gonna get the names correct here after all this time. 2 weeks ago, you said that no matter how hard Whaley trains, she will never catch up to Dern in terms of jiu-jitsu. To counter, in just a year, she managed to become better than Carla in wrestling. And to counter my argument, Whaley out-wrestled one of the best anti-wrestlers in MMA, men or women. Joanna, which Carla couldn't do, took Rose down 5 out of 11 times. Carla was 2 of 11 and out-wrestles Carla, who people think has good wrestling since she's been doing it longer. So there is that. So I get what you're saying. But here, if we're going to continue kind of those comparisons, we had seen Carla out wrestled before, though. Like, Tatiana Suarez obviously had no troubles there. And then, no success against. Let's put it this way. We've seen Carla have less success with her wrestling more often than Dern has had less success with her jiu-jitsu. And in terms of those backgrounds, I think it's probably safe to say that Mackenzie Dern is a more credentialed Brazilian jiu-jitsu practitioner, player, however you want to describe them, than Carla is a wrestler. So there's kind of levels to what they're doing. And like even in that matchup, Mackenzie very well would probably submit Carla as well. Hard to say, and I know it seems funny after her losses, but that's still very possible. Styles make fights and all that. You just got to think about how much when you look at like the success rate, like I said, we've kind of seen. So I think it's a little bit different in terms of those two fighters. I mean, I think you make a fair point there, but never mentioned it for Carla. So I think it's a little different. I still stand by that. Yes. Centro says for Zhang versus Esparza pre-fight, there was a narrative that maybe else were pushing that if the fight got like that, Whaley would fade. Please try to explain that narrative. I think we talked about that. I think we talked about that before the fight because of the Rose rematch. Because I've never thought that she faded in like the Joanna fight or anything, right? Like she won the last round at least. But she lost the last 2 rounds against Rose. I think most people agree on that, especially the 5th round. So that's why that happened, Centro. It's pretty obvious. And yeah, see, like it wasn't from the Joanna fight; it was the Rose rematch. And then, of course, with a wrestling style, which is how Rose beat her in the 5th round. So yeah. Rain says the Dana White of scoring 30-27 without even watching the fight. Tracy Cortez. The Dana White of scoring 30-27 without even watching the fight. Tracy Cortez boxes like Julio Cesar Chavez, D'Angelo Hill have played. Paying the hotel bill. Drake Riggs eats a lot of salty figs. All right. This guy, Rain, every week. You got to love it. My goodness. So a ghost mentioning what is this? I don't know if it's the Peter Yan fight or the Yan Xiaonan fight. It says to explain to the Yan fans, no, Yan was not robbed. Both of his fights came down to small tech. Oh, okay. It says his Piotr Yan. Small technical details while Patty did nothing. Can I bring something up? Yes, Gordon was robbed, but I'm seeing people compare this to Yan versus Aljo or Yan versus O'Malley. I haven't seen the comparisons, but I totally knew people would obviously talk about Yan and O'Malley and Patty versus Gordon, because those were obviously the two most controversial ones of the year, probably. But I do agree that I still haven't rewatched the first round of Yan versus O'Malley, which I need to, because my stream was messing up there. But it was definitely more competitive, I think, than Patty versus Gordon. To get slightly off track here today, that's all right. We got a smaller lineup, like I said. This just says I didn't finish this question. What do I say to defeat the argument once and for all? Well, let me see here. Did I miss something? Where are you? Oh, how to destroy the argument? Well, yeah, I mean, you already did. You did it yourself, Jen. That's why. They're haters. They're just Whaley haters. If she prepared 10 out of 10, like, obviously the 10 out of 10 thing, that's all you need to say. It's clearly trolling. It's clearly trolling. I don't even need to address it. Let's see. And then Ryu was saying, that's gonna be hard for me to adjust. To counter the point, Dern had no success against Yan and Rodriguez, who are inferior grapplers. That's not true, though. She did have success. She won some rounds and threatened with submissions. Like, just because she didn't pull them off doesn't mean she didn't have success. She still clearly did good, and some people even think she beat Xiaonan. So there's that. Since, as I have said, just watch the fight once. I have said just watch the fight again. Whaley dominated, and that always counters that physically with no technique. They always counter with right. Well, see, I mean, that's just ignorance if they actually believe that as well. Rio says that Whaley has Josh Ingram. I'm telling you, she'll be better than Dern and maybe submit her. Oh, it's one way to find out. There's only one way to find out. What is up, Jumbo? How are you? Good to see you. Hi. But all right, let's get into, I mean, you guys, Bellator 289 here. This weekend of action really, it was good. Specifically, UFC 282 was very good, I thought. Very fun. Not really fight standouts in terms of, a good competitive fight of the night. I mean, Till and Duplessis was pretty wild, and I think that was probably fair to get fight of the night. But performances kind of stood out a little bit more. Tapuria, obviously amazing, yada, yada. But everything was overshadowed by just terrible, strange judging. That's the story of the weekend. And when that's the big story, that's a problem. And there's a story here that we're about to get into that has been overshadowed. And of course, it's not as big of a deal, maybe, but still worth highlighting. And that's why we have this show to do that. So before we get to that, though, we did have Liz Carmouche successfully defending her title, once again defeating Juliana Velasquez, this time via a second round submission armbar at 4 minutes and 24 seconds. So this fight was very kind of weird because really there's not a lot happened. It was kind of just Carmouche strictly trying to use her wrestling this time around, which worked clearly, but didn't even bother striking and whatnot. Smart. It was all smart by her, but like what we got was a lot of cage control before some very slowly transition kind of takedowns, which were good. It was all like well done by Carmouche. Obviously not very fast-paced, very entertaining, exciting, whatever you want, but that was practically all that happened. Getting Velasquez down until ultimately getting the mount in the second round there, working her way to almost a top triangle from the mount, which was looking pretty cool there. That was kind of a fun sequence. Turned it into an armbar. Like, it was all brilliant stuff there from Carmouche. Great win for her. Looked like she did exactly what she should have wanted to do. Zero damage taken whatsoever. dominant, perfect performance. Not super exciting or anything. Didn't do really any damage, but hey, she went in there and ran through, the person that there was controversy of last time. Now settles that. But that's what sucks. That's why Bellator is really, I don't want to say they're dumb for this, but they completely, it's like unintentional though. Now Juliana Velasquez is fucked, right? Like they give her this instant rematch, which really was unnecessary. Like I understood both sides of the stoppage, right? Being maybe a little early, but at the same time, not intelligent defense. That was my big thing. She wasn't physically able to defend. I know there was still a couple of seconds, all this. We don't need to get into that fight necessarily, the first fight, but Velasquez also wasn't like a long reigning champ. She only had one defense, all this stuff. There were people, maybe not super clear contenders you could have put in there against Carmouche for this first defense, but now Velasquez has been finished twice by Carmouche. Just forget about the first one. This one, very clear, not even close. Now she's like totally in that Joseph Benavidez kind of limbo position that she's going to need Carmouche to like get dethroned to be champion, to have a shot again. And I don't think I see anybody beating Carmouche as long as she's around. But that's the thing too, then, Carmouche very well may retire in a couple fights. I think when I talked to her, she was saying, maybe like 3 or 4 would be ideal. So she might not stick around that long. It might not be that bad for Velasquez in that case, but just for her immediate goals now, she just has to literally beat everybody she possibly can to even be in that conversation again, because right now there's no chance of Velasquez Carmouche trilogy in several years, or ever again, unless she goes out and starches absolutely everybody like I'm saying she's going to probably have to do. So those are kind of the only talking points about that fight. Carmouche did say after, she wants to do a one-off kind of bantamweight fight. They should not make a bantamweight division. That would be one of the worst ideas Bellator could do, because it would eat away at both of their featherweight and flyweight divisions. But Carmouche wants to have that Alima fight. They're good buddies. Have that as, I don't know about their double retirement fight or Alima's at least. Would be a fun one, but then it obviously wouldn't be for the title, so it's kind of weird. And then she thinks that at the end of next year, by that time, after she can make that happen in her perfect world, you're going to have the Kana rematch in Japan. So I love that she mentioned that. And of course, Kana loves to hear that, but that means Kana has to, win her way to that still, because that would be at the end of the year, as she mentioned, in her perfect scenario world. But could be cool, could be fun. It's going to be interesting to see where things go from here in Bellator's flyweight division. It's kind of, and we'll get into the next one here, as I mentioned, but it's very, it's kind of taken such a unique turn since Carmouche has become the champion now. Just with one fight like that. Cintro says, I thought UFC was a disaster. As we've said before, you could put a bunch of nobodies, I'm assuming you mean, and get finishes, but do we really want that? I mean, it depends on the finishes. Go says, Liz is the only fighter that Valentina couldn't really beat. Obviously, kayfabe, calm down, Valentina fans. I mean, that fight was practically a sparring match. Jin says, see, this is what I'm talking about. I didn't even know about this until I rewatched this last week. What's Bellator's issue with not promoting fights? Yeah, they did an absolutely awful, he says, rewatch WMMAnia to clear up any confusion. There you go. Yeah, they did. I will say, I think they did a pretty good job of selling not even this card, but clearly they were all about the Sabatello Stotts fight and everything. So they were getting them out to everything. Like they were at Bellator 288 when I was there. They were getting those guys out, but there was zero promotion for the other half of the tournament, which Patchy Mick's probably going to win that thing. That guy's very good. And then this title fight, like, I mean, just weird. Like they when they want to, they will do it, but I don't know. I really don't know. Centro says, what is the game-breaking cheat code of the women? Ghost mentioned that hooking off the jab for 205. So is there one for the women? So I can tell Whaley, Drake, do you think a cheat code? So that you can tell Whaley. Well, I mean, what people are going to say is for what people would have said for a long time anyway, would have been what the head and arm throw. That old judo toss that Ronda did, and a lot of people been able to do it, were able to do it. And we still see it every now and then, but I don't know if there's a specific thing that stands out to me anymore aside from that one. That was always kind of the one. So Lafayette is here, a Raider fan. Good to see you. Thanks for tuning in. Haven't seen the name before, so if it's your first time, welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in. Says Watanabe should perform better this time. I mean, it's hard to do as bad as she did the first time. So we love Kana around these parts. She knows kind of what went wrong there. And there were kind of some weird circumstances directly ahead of that, too. So I think she would perform better. And she's looked great, since she pulled off the great win against Denise and all that since. So I would expect her to. And, she'll keep learning and growing and whatnot. As Ghost mentions, well, the reason hooking off the jab as a cheat code of 205 is because every light heavyweight is a doofus with their right hands. Well, he's going after the light heavyweights now, which, there you have it, I guess. And he says she really didn't beat Santos either. Sorry, Valentina fans. A fair thought. That was definitely a very competitive fight, and people feel both ways about that one. First time here, he says, all right, well, thanks, man. Appreciate you finding us, and hopefully you like what you see. Feel free to throw in any comments or concerns you might have at any time. As Go says, cheat code for the women is just generate power. Don't believe me, look at Nunes and Andrade. Not technically good, but girls are afraid of them and they win. Well, when he said that, I thought of Josiane Nunes, which is a pretty good example of recently, right? So, power is always a great equalizer. JL is here, who another new name that I haven't seen. Appreciate you if this is your first time tuning in. Thank you so much. As man, Patty got on my nerves. Well, that is certainly fair. Let's not get too much into that since we won't talk about that on this show. But I will agree. He had a couple L's this past week for sure, or at least he should have. We could put it that way. Crazy stuff in that regard. But all right, this is a great question here before we do move on. Lafayette, thank you. Says, what are your thoughts on Deanna Bennett fighting Carmouche? Deanna said Liz is ducking her. Yeah, I mean, silly. That's really silly of her to say. Just, of course, got to hype herself up. Deanna wants her title shot. I don't think she will get it. I think she has a case, but probably need one more. We have Kana and Vita Ortega right up there. I think that's probably the fight Bellator is going to make next, especially with the timing and everything considered. That just makes a lot of sense. Or you could throw Deanna against either of them, but that's kind of maybe the trio there. I think there's going to have to be some fighting to decide who the next contender is, right? But she's just kind of putting her name out there, I think, which is smart, right? But definitely Liz. Liz beat her in the debut, right? That fight already happened. Liz Carmouche submitted her. So, it's clear what she's doing there. It's pretty clear. I forgot about that until he's talking about it right there. So, yeah. But, all right, Jay. Well, I'll get to these really quickly before we move on. It says, what does the winner of Strickland and Jared get? Loser of Robert Costa? Probably. I think that would make sense. Is Pena deserving of a rematch? No, absolutely not. Last fight was one of the more one-sided fights you will see. Thoughts on the 50-45 scorecard? I wasn't paying enough attention. That fight I didn't think was very good. Stotts and Sabatello. I wasn't really scoring it as I was watching. I was just it just did not really do anything for me, so I didn't even bother scoring. But it didn't look like a 50-45 from what I was watching, so I don't really have a strong comment on that. I think it's always funny optically when you look at the scorecards like that. But either way, from what I did watch, I will say still not as bad as 49-46 in a way. If you know, you know. And Esther says, will the UFC go back to Singapore in 2023? I would give that a 50-50 chance. Maybe more likely for a fight night than a pay-per-view, but I guess we'll see. So, all right, speaking of scores, though, and whatnot, as I was prefacing here, this is one I didn't see since I didn't catch this fight live, so I went back and had to rewatch it afterward. I don't know what I was doing at the time, but I'm curious to know, for those who did see this, and what kind of the thoughts were on it, because Elara Joanny defeats Denise Kielholtz via split decision. Kind of interesting scores here, right? 27-30, 29-28, and 30-27. So I believe Crosby also judged this one. I was looking at it last night. Believe he also scored this one and had it. He was on one of these 30-27 sides. I don't remember specifically which one, but the guy just doesn't even care, does he? This was a weird one, though. Let's just start off with kind of the obvious. As the fight began, whole lot of winging. This was not a fight where technique was very much involved in the exchanges. A whole lot of windmill arm punches, a bit, mostly from Joanny Kielholtz, the former kickboxing champ and all that. Still was a little bit wild at times there, but less so, I think, fair to say. I don't really. It's a weird one because I don't think this was a robbery. But as we said a little bit last week, I think it was, or whenever it was, this past month. I mean, I say this all the time. I've always said you can have close but clear fights. And in this one, and in those exchanges, the numbers were relatively close, especially in the first round. I remember Morrow was pretty surprised. He's like, wow, they were 20-20. But Denise had a pretty clear, more impact on her shots. Landed the cleaner ones, at least, that's for sure. Dropped Elara in the third round. It was kind of half slip, but she did connect with it, so you can kind of give or take that. Either way, there was it was mostly Denise causing things, is how I felt. There was a beautiful, absolutely beautiful scramble there. I think it was in the third round. Great stuff there. I would love to hear Ghost's thoughts on that because, the kind of the way they transitioned there and got to Elara on top, which she didn't end up doing anything with that, though. So it's like, I completely understand 30-27 for Kielholtz in this one. Maybe 29-28. I just don't really see her losing. I really did not see her losing this one at all. I could understand any combination of the rounds. Clearly, as I said, I could understand 30-27, but maybe the first two for her. Big John even disagreed. I know you guys can hate on him all you want in his commentary, but the guy knows what he's talking about in terms of rules and scoring because he helped create that shit. So I always, if he says something, I will typically default and be like, all right, well, I guess I gotta comply to that. And I think he felt this was more of a robbery than I did. So there's that saying whatever it's saying. But it's just a bummer because that's three in a row now for Denise losing, and she was the number 3 ranked in the Bellator rankings, whereas Elara was not ranked at all. So she's jumping all the way up there. Kind of crazy. I just did not see her winning this one. Again, I don't think it was bad enough to be a robbery like the Patty fight that we saw this weekend. And you guys know me. I don't shout robbery very much. It's the most overused term in the sport. And I dare even say that Ankalaev got robbed of a victory too. I thought he definitely won that one. So 2 robberies this week for sure. And then this one's fairly close, I think. But yeah, I think Denise should have won this one. So that sucks. She was just making things happen a bit more and connected, much cleaner, I think. When you just look at the lack of technique kind of coming her way. Not that is necessarily something that plays into the scores. It's what you just do with the shots landed. But yeah, I don't know. It was an interesting one, that's for sure. That's for sure. As Jay says, Canada deserves a UFC event. Yes, I know it's been quite a while. I think that they'll probably get it next year. As Ghost says, the reason power is the greatest weapon for the women is because 90% of women don't play clever tricks on their opponents. All right. Centro says Crosby's the worst ref. Would you, Drake, ever interview him and hold him accountable? I mean, I will hold literally anybody accountable that I'm talking to. Ghost, excuse me, Centro. Doesn't matter who you are, of course. I did a and Crosby's a judge actually, but I know what you mean. Obviously, I think it was early last year. I did a piece actually where I interviewed a handful of judges. I don't remember how many, maybe around 7. I got around to a good amount and kind of just asked their thoughts um, on kind of some general questions without, pressing them too much specifically, just because I was like, I want to hear, what they think about how scoring is done and whatnot, like how because it's always interpreted differently. Let's hear what they actually have to say. So I can put that in the comments, I think, after the show. It was on the scrap back in the day, but didn't talk to Doug Crosby. But if I did, I think we'd have a good time there. And from the stuff that he has done, he just, he's a unique fella. Let's leave it at that. So, yeah. Ghost says transitions were interesting, but Ilara didn't do anything on top. Exactly. So, yeah, it was. It just was. I don't know. I just can't see the case for her. I mean, you could probably convince me if you had a good enough argument, but I have yet to obviously hear that. So yeah. Centro says, that doesn't help me, Ghost and Drake. What am I supposed to tell Whaley on Instagram? Just to have big power. Yeah, there you go. I mean, she does, right? So there you go. Makoto says, can I ask a non-women's question? How good is Tapuria? His striking and grappling phenomenal. Yeah, no, he is absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. So, yeah, I mean, Tapuria, he would absolutely destroy Patty, like, no question whatsoever. That fight, it makes sense why they haven't done that one, right? Like Tapuria, I mean, he could be. I don't know if I'm ready to say he could be champion just yet, but he is 100% going to be a contender. Very good. He's very good. And no filter. No, the imposter is gone. Got rid of him. I think it was 2 weeks ago. You were good. So thanks for pointing that out. I hate that shit, and I've been on the receiving end of it too, man. So do not steal identities, people. That's the moral today. The moral of the story: be your own person. Don't be a troll. Don't steal identities. All that stuff. So kind of common thoughts. Just don't be a weirdo. Don't be an asshole, I guess. As we like to spread our positivity around here as best as we can. And I almost just left the room, the stream room. So whoops. But we're good. We're all good. Moving along. That was Bellator 289. Had some upsets, had some drama. Just like the entire week. It was just one of those weekends of MMA. My goodness. But anyway, let's get to the news, as we have just a couple fights to get to here before card was announced earlier today. But we'll be kicking things off with strawweight Jasmine Jasudavicius versus Courtney Casey has been added to UFC the Fight Night event on February 25th. So a ways away for this one. Let me get up the proper window. I'm kind of surprised by this one being made, honestly, because of the fact that Courtney has obviously been around in the UFC for a good long time now. What, since like 2015-ish, right? She came in for that short notice JoJo fight. Now she's still hanging around. Got to a 500 record, but she's still hanging on. And Jasmine's still relatively new to the promotion. Had that Natty Silva loss, the beatdown, the beautiful perfection from Natty Silva the last time out. So she's going to look to try and right that wrong and make a bit of a springboard rebound here against Courtney. So I don't know. I don't think I have too much wrong with it because stylistically, I think that this is actually a pretty decent matchup for Jasmine. Courtney, though, always finds ways to make her fights relatively competitive. And she can do that again here. Obviously, has the experience edge, has fought much better competition. All these things are in her favor, but it's just a matter of like how much is she have left in the tank. And so I guess we will find out. But as you guys know, if you've been here before, and for those new viewers tuning in right now, appreciate you again. The news section of the show is pretty much me just rating if the matchup is like fine matchmaking or not. And with this one, I will give it. Should we start doing ratings like out of 10? I think that might be fun, right? What do you guys think? I'll say this one is fine though. I would give it I'd give it a solid 5. It's right in the middle just because, and how boring is that for me for the first rating I would throw out there. But it's a solid 5 though, because I'm surprised by it and whatnot. For Casey's experience, she could probably fight someone else, but at the same time, like I think we know her ceiling at this point. And I guess kind of a gatekeeper role, you could say, just kind of back end, a litmus test of sorts. But yeah, so we'll find out. We will find out. Okay. So moving along there. Bum, bum, bum. What is it? Jen says, I think ratings are great for matchups and fights, better than predictions. All right. Okay. This could be a thing we could just add to the previews as well. I have nothing wrong with ratings. It's like movies. I like to rate movies when I can. So we will do the same here then. At least we'll try and get that started. As a Ghost saying, who is the UFC trying to push in this matchup with Casey and Jasmine? Well, I don't know if I'd say they are trying to push either, but if they were going to push one, it would obviously be the younger prospect in Jasmine. I'm definitely not trying to boost Casey at this point. So, yeah. And James asking about this video that he presented with me. We're not getting into that, James. Definitely not. And for obvious reasons, like, let me just say this. The person that you're highlighting specifically in the video that you presented me with, and I know this is a tease to everybody, but listen, like, I think that you are blaming somebody who I consider a friend, for something absolutely ridiculous. Like, if you're going to present that thing to me, at least go find the proof of them not doing what you're saying they're not doing. Because I guarantee you, if we brought that person onto the show right now and asked them about this stuff, which is completely pointless, by the way, if we did that, I know that they would explain that they are not a bigot or fucking whatever you're accusing them of. It's just stupid. It's offensive, not only to them, but to me. Was it James? Sorry, not going to confuse you guys. So no, I'm not going to share that video because it's just ridiculous. And like, you can make up your own stuff in your head, but trust me, that is not the case. All right. So that's all I'm going to say about that. If you have proof, I'm whatever. Okay. But just listen to what I'm saying. We're never trying to be negative on this show. I don't know how many times I've got to make that clear to you guys. No matter who it is, people are entitled to their own opinions as long as you're not being a douchebag or an asshole, mean, whatever it may be. But all right, So now I'm all off track. But speaking, I'm glad that you mentioned videos though, because we do have a surprise here. I almost forgot about that. So let me. Oh goodness, I gotta remember where that was. That might have been on my Twitter DMs, but we'll get to that after the news. We'll get to that after the news. So you reminded me about something, so that's good. But anyway, okay. At flyweight, Viviane Araujo, as old man Stamina would say, he still hasn't found his way here, or he's just done with us. I don't know. But she's taking on Amanda Hebos at UFC 285 on March 4th. Location to be determined. My goodness, you talk about Amanda getting a lower risk, higher reward matchup off of maybe the opposite of that. Like, she somehow leveraged losing the Cortez fight, which was a higher risk, lower reward matchup for sure. In terms of the styles, like stylistically, Araujo probably slightly better just because of the lack of, or not the same level of wrestling. Maybe like Viviani has obviously improved her wrestling recently, but man, how does she go from that to this? Like, she goes from the Cortez fight to one of the top contenders on a pay-per-view. I'm still a ways away, so let's not get. And I totally spelled location wrong. If you guys are seeing the ticker there, let me get that for my OCD sake. That's the biggest surprise about this matchup. Like, I don't know how you go from one to that, but this should be pretty fun. I like it. I always love Viviani Araujo's fights. Of course, she's looking to rebound after the Alexa Grasso loss in that main event that she had, a month or so ago, whenever that one was. So yeah, I mean, I don't know about this in terms of our new rating system and whatnot. The matchmaking here, it's still interesting because Hebos has not had any real success at flyweight, right? She's a strawweight who's kind of trying to figure out this flyweight thing, or try to be a flyweight, right? Like, her best flyweight win is probably Paige, right? If we're being honest, am I forgetting somebody? And then lost to Chukagian in the last fight. Not a great defensive performance from her, that's for sure. I don't know. I don't know why she's just not trying to stick with strawweight. So that's kind of confusing, but she's getting a better opportunity here. That's like the big thing than Cortez. So, yeah, I mean, in terms of a fight, it's like, so when we do the score, let's think in terms of the fight itself and then the matchmaking. That's going to come both into play here. Like, because for Araujo, I don't know if it does too much for her aside from just a win, really. Because again, Hebus is just kind of trying this thing out, right? But I do like the matchup a lot. So I don't know. I guess I'd give this a pretty fine 6, maybe 6.5. I don't know about doing the halves, but I think it's okay. You know, if Araujo was had just beat Grasso, then obviously this would be a big problem. But you know, I think in terms of the fight as a matchup boosts it a little bit more, because the matchmaking, I think, really hurts it. So I think I'll go 6, though. I like it better than the last fight that we were talking about, that's for sure. But it's an interesting one. It's very tricky in that regard. So, yeah. All right. So I see that it looks like we have a troll. Let me see here. Well, I want to kind of let me look at this here for a second. Getting sidetracking me. My goodness, where's Alvin today to help me out with the clarity? Let's see. Rose is clearly better than Carla or Zhang. Well, I maybe because she lost to one of those people at least. I don't remember hearing that. All right. Well, you know what? I'll be generous. I will give you just a timeout today, but don't come in all hot like that, sir. If you're going to come into the show, take it easy. Ease your way in. Be smarter about it. My goodness. And yes, that's against the rules too. Derailing me so aggressively as we're trying to stay on track here. So I have a lineup. I have an order of business here to go through, but appreciate the visit. Nonetheless, no matter if you're a troll or not, whoever you are, appreciate the views. And if you like the show, regardless of disagreeing with whoever you disagree with, don't forget to visit MMAnia.com for all your MMA needs. Hit that like button, share, and subscribe. Tell a friend. to at least come and check it out. There's even a notification bell, so you don't miss a thing. But anyway, last bit of news today. Just announced today, actually. Invicta FC 51. Full card announced, full lineup revealed. We already knew Tanisha Tennant was going to defend the title against Talita Bernardo at bantamweight, but now the vacant flyweight title is going to be decided between Christina Williams and Ketlin Souza. Serena Southpaw's back, a alumni of the show, a friend of the show, former guest host, taking on Olga Rubin, the last title contender, challenger. If Serena wins, I mean, if she wins, you can pretty much guarantee she's going to get her title shot there. At least she should. Claire Guthrie versus Autumn Norton should be fun. Claire staying busy on the Invicta event lineup, huh? Mester Valencia and Ferreira, Katie Saul, Rayon Amanda, Fatima Klein's back, Laura Gallardo. So again, it's kind of what I'm saying. Like, I like the flyweight fight. Christina Williams, always fun. Kellen Souza. But it just goes to show you like where we're at with Invicta at this point. They have, they're not a feeder league necessarily anymore, I would say. It's kind of, when I think of a feeder league, I think of like somebody who's really directly connected maybe to another bigger promotion and feeding them that way. But Invicta is very much about the prospects these days. I guess let's put it that way. That's not a bad thing. It's just where we're at. You look at the evolution of them throughout their history, really, and where things started, where they had been. Like when I mentioned the champions, the names of champions at strawweight, when we were talking about Emily Ducote and where we're at now and everything. So anyway, as for this card, I mean, it doesn't do anything crazy for me. It's not one that screams I gotta see this. Like, I'm fascinated by Tennant versus Bernardo, but I feel pretty confident that Tennant's going to be pretty fine there if she can keep it off the ground, which is pretty much the case against Bernardo typically. But yeah, I don't know. It's the atomweight fights. Love to see some atomweight love. But overall, I don't know. This one's not doing a whole lot for me. It really isn't. I think I might go 4. Like if I was to rate this thing as a whole, it's not it's just all right. It's just, but I guess that'd be below all right, wouldn't it? So I don't know. We'll definitely watch. Always going to tune in, but in terms of hype, excitement on paper, I mean, Serena, I don't know. I might give it a 5. I might give it a perfect 5. I know nothing too fancy here, but I'm going to keep it real with you guys. If it's how I feel about it, it's how I feel. Yeah, it is what it is. It's a sign of the times as we go on and on with each of these cards. So just happy to have Invicta going. That's the number one thing. And I'm happy to have them out of Kansas City, as it looks like they're continuing to try and get around, as that was always the plan dating back to, early last year. I remember Shannon telling me they were going to try and get out and about as much as they could. So making it happen, at least out of Kansas City, which is the best thing they can do, even though some of the judges they still get at their shows are still quite shitty. So I don't know what to do about that. So, okay. So Rio is telling me that that person from earlier is just a blatant troll. All right, I'll believe you. I believe you. We'll see if they continue, if they keep it up here. Ghost says, can we get Ramona back on Invicta? Very possible. Wouldn't hate that. Think we could. We very well could, especially since she's in America now. Cintro says, what do you think of the idea of Invicta co-promoting with Deep Jewels? I would love that, Cintro. I think that would be probably the best thing Invicta could do right now. And I mean, it doesn't hurt Deep Jewels either. That would be very fun for both. That would be perfect. Like I don't remember if I asked Jan about that the last time I talked to her. It's been a good while. I talked to her for my big project that I'm still kind of working on. And then Mr. Sayaki too, who is the the president of Deep. talk to both of them, but I don't know if I mentioned that idea, but that would be great. That would be amazing. I would absolutely love that. Yeah, I mean, seriously, that would be great. You know, Invicta versus Deep Jewels, that would be awesome. Yeah, we could see. Well, I guess it's kind of like Rise and integration, right? Because what Sario Oshima, well, she's the atomweight champ in Deep, so then you could do her versus DeCourse, but obviously, Saka with the Ryzen and the strawweight, so she could fight Machado. I mean, I think Deep Jewels would probably win those pretty comfortably. Rin Nakai is the flyweight champ. She would beat either Christina Williams or Souza, who win this upcoming fight. So, like, maybe that's why Invicta wouldn't want to do it. He says it's something that would interest him and a lot of people. Yeah, for sure. I mean, for the exposure on both sides and whatnot, and just getting these people involved with one another, would definitely be awesome. So, Ghost says Ramona's last fight with Invicta was pretty spectacular. So, do you remember? Yeah, of course. It was the Peshua one, right? The master class in less than a minute. So, James says, let me reward my question, as Jin likes to say, to make it more neutral. Should we feel sympathy and respect for all champions who fall? Yeah, I mean, unless, like, I don't know. Again, whenever, it's kind of like the job thing, right? You never want to see anybody lose their job unless they're just like a blatantly terrible person, right? And even then, it doesn't feel very like a good thing to say. So I'm not going to say that. But if there was any situation, even though I did just say that, even if there was any situation, like, you should never really want to see people fail or fall or whatnot. If you want to see somebody else succeed, that's great. Like, over the other. But again, like, what does it really matter to you if somebody falls? Like, how does that affect you? Think of it that way. Sure, you feel better maybe in the case of somebody else or whatnot that way, but does someone else's failure really make a difference to you? And maybe it does, depending on how closely related you are. Of course, there's many variables, but they earned the spot in some usually. It's not like people get handed the belts all too often. Maybe it has happened in certain cases, but yeah, I think it's fair to say, you gotta respect the hustle and getting there in the first place. So in that regard, I think definitely. Okay, so this is fair, I think. Not so much this part, because Rose is obviously, taking time off. She's got her movie coming out. Whaley doesn't decide the matchmaking, sir. So I will entertain you here. Whaley does not decide who fights her. Maybe they will. I talked about this. I think it was after the Lemos win, right? Because we're in this weird spot right now with the strawweight title scene. And that was actually the last bit of news, so I could take that down. But we're in this weird spot with the strawweight division, at least at the top, where Lemos getting it, I guess, makes sense because Andrade is going up for her next fight again, but she just beat her, so like it feels kind of weird. Rose is coming off a loss in an absolutely terrible fight, but has 2 wins over Whaley on paper. So, like, it wouldn't at all surprise me to see the UFC give Rose the trilogy title fight next, but I don't need to see that. We don't need to see that yet. Like, I'm sure they are going to fight again, most likely, but it's not needing to happen just yet. Okay, well, if she did say that, I mean, she's coming off a loss. She's coming off a loss. I think you're projecting there for sure. Not a lack of confidence, but she's, I mean, like I said, she's coming off a loss. So however you feel about it, that's how it is. It was a terrible fight. I mean, why didn't they give Rose the trilogy with Carla then? Ask yourself those questions. Baseless claim there on the second part, though. Anyway, that is good. I don't know if that's a good segue. Actually, I think it might be a good segue from what I remember, as we do have a special little portion of the show here for you guys. Okay, so Rose versus Carla does not count as a fight. I mean, that is fair for sure, but Again, you're saying this with the fighters having all this control. Like, you need to understand the UFC makes these decisions. Sure, Rose can decline, but she's not giving anything. If she would have said no, she very well could have been stripped. But like, she's not. Champions, nobody decides anything in the UFC but the UFC. I mean, look at what happened this past weekend. Literally, this past weekend, Ankalaev and Blachowicz go to a draw. Within minutes, they make Glover versus Jamal Hill for next month. So all right. Well, now you're just attacking Rambo. So I've had enough. I tried. I gave you a chance, but we will see you on your next account because I'm sure you'd like to come back. But that was kind of fun. At least they weren't too, out there, but still very obvious what's going on. Anyway, happy Tuesday, everybody. Happy December 13th for you all. All right, let's try and get back on track here now, because that was definitely derailing, which that's a bannable offense in its own right. But okay, here we are. Sorry for not responding to you. Yes, that's what I was getting at. Yeah. Thankfully, the racism has been toned down a lot since one very bad case that we had. But looks like we're getting introduced to a new segment here, you guys. Like, I didn't even bring this up, but Ghost threw it at me. A new segment, the Phantom Punch Breakdown, is no more. And I don't think I got to watch this. So hopefully you were a good boy, Ghost, in here. But he's giving us a Tactical Tuesday. So what exactly that entails, we're about to find out. Let me pull it all up. A new segment. I don't even have the banner ready. That's how new and fresh this is. And I almost opened my DMs there. We're all over the place. We are all over the place. How do I let me full screen? There we go. Okay. So this might just be a Phantom Punch breakdown with a new name. I'm not sure. As Rue presents a good point. What if the show happens on a Wednesday? Yeah, well, then I guess we'll just hold it till whenever it's on Tuesday. But we're trying to stick to schedule. We're trying to stay on these days. But anyway, Tactical Tuesday number 1, according to Mr. Ghost Phantom, our neighborhood-friendly ghost, as you may call him if you are from the Spider-Verse. With your must-needed, warranted copyright disclaimer under the section of 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. I don't know if I necessarily need to read this out, but, we'll put it on the screen in case of any troubles that we could run into. Just for the moment, for anybody trying to get us potentially in trouble. As Ghost says, since most of us in the chat train in MMA, I'd like to share a tactic that could be helpful to all of you who are sparring. A Tactical Tuesday if you must. So there you go. Origin of the video. Using high kicks to the open side towards the rear hand should be used more, since most MMA fighters will only block instead of catch. Showing off the wonderful Thompson versus Holland fight. That happened 2 weeks ago now. Southpaw versus orthodox stances. Looks high to sell the high kick. How good is that Wonder Boy, huh? Arm swing to bring up the opponent's defense. Kick the liver while the opponent is thinking head kick. And I like kind of the stills you did there, Ghost, because I think that you don't need the Copyright Act for the pictures, but I appreciate it nonetheless, being smart and protective. So thank you for that. But he says, even Esparza, who's a wrestler, has a hard time catching high kicks to the open side. I mean, I don't think she's faced with them, has been faced with them too much, honestly. But yeah, obviously wasn't having success there. Esparza looks to block the high, which is colored in blue, since Whaley sells the high kick, but lead leg stabbing front kick to the liver lands instead. Yeah, gotta make your opponents think. Mix it up. It's very rare to see a fighter use a cross kick catch and get a takedown off the catch. However, still possible as seen in the next example. Open stance matchup where Rose uses a rear, what does that say? Leg high kick, yeah. Here in round 2 of the rematch. That was kind of close there. Whaley sees the kick and uses a crossbody catch and bundles Rose to the floor. Yep, tries to pull away. Whoa, somersault time, almost. What is limiting fighters from using the high kick tactic to achieve the strategy of kicking the liver? He asks. All right. So what is limiting fighters from using the high kick tactic to achieve the strategy of kicking the liver? I mean, obviously this goes back to the diversity in your arsenal, even having those weapons available to you, like if you can throw them in, but then a matter of mixing them in and confusing your opponent, not being worried about certain things, right? So what this is, again, you guys, essentially Ghost asking questions he already knows the answer to. And but yeah, I think that's pretty much the best we can look at it. Like when you look at, like I said, watching that, Carla, I don't know if I can't think of too many cases where she's been attacked with head kicks because people worry about the wrestling, so they don't want to throw kicks in general. But like even back in the day, the Joanna fight, I don't recall Joanna throwing any head kicks, or really if she threw too many kicks at all in that one. But yeah, obviously just making your opponent think, not being worried. It's just all a mental chess match, right? So that was a nice little tidbit, tasty tactical Tuesday. I guess you could say, nice and short little guy, as opposed to the PBBs, but yeah. Neighborhood friendly ghost, yep. Jamie says he's going to try that. Nice, I've always wanted liver kick setups. This is cool. Are we going to get a question that he knows the answer already? Yes, we did. So high kick to the liver kick, love it. I'm going to try that. Nice, I just got into kickboxing, says Makoto. Very cool. And I says, Joanna didn't throw a single kick against Carla. Joanna didn't throw a single kick. Yeah, I didn't think so. I really did not. Yeah, didn't need to, but didn't even bother. Do you think that would have been smart, or back then high kicks didn't exist? No, I think they definitely existed, but I mean, I don't know. I think she would have been fine either way, but it's just like she didn't need to, essentially, like I was just saying right there. She did not need to, so maybe she didn't even think to do it. And being faced with Carla was trying, very, very hard to get her takedowns, but having no success. Maybe Jonas thinking if she gave a kick, it would just open up, obviously, the possibility of it being caught. Whether it would have or not gives it a chance. So it's like, why put yourself in a potentially dangerous situation when you don't have to? I guess, like we've talked about this before. I think there's a phrase that I'm totally blanking on, but I guess it just all goes back to risk versus reward management. That's always a common one that we think of. And Go says, you think people were just scared of them being caught despite it being hard to do? I think maybe a combination, right? Like we can think about the interesting thing that Alima said now. Like who knows how many fighters kind of have that same issue like her with, the hips and not being able to even throw kicks like that, potentially an Emi Fujino thing. Like I haven't talked to her since we talked to Alima as well, since I talked to Alima. But, maybe that's a thing that certain women struggle with, and, maybe some men too, but that's the only time I've heard about it was from her, which is interesting. So yeah, but Centro asking, what makes that different from PvP? Well, it didn't highlight one specific fighter, right? That was about the tactic. So I think that's your answer there. And Rio says, McFarlane can't kick, period. That seems pretty limiting. No, 100%. No, 100% it does. It certainly does. Yeah. Yeah. I know. I was kind of surprised that she would admit that, but I guess that's her own confidence in herself. So who knows? You never know how many people could be like not wanting to say that either. So that's why I was mostly surprised that she did admit that, when that's a pretty big thing to just say like half your arsenal is completely not a thing. Or at least a big portion of it, a potentially big portion. There's obviously the grappling and whatnot, but the ability to set things up and yada yada. So, all right. With all that in mind, I know I really want to. I really want to now that we've made that discovery. So, yeah, don't know if she ever has at all. Maybe she has that same issue, but only one way to find out. But before we do that, we must preview UFC Vegas 66, the final UFC card of the year. Just one fight on this card. So let's get to it. Let's get it on out of the way, shall we? But first, Jin says, "Would I've noticed that Fujino doesn't kick if Ghost didn't point it out? I definitely would have noticed, but maybe not. It definitely helps that he did because, like, I don't think I've ever gone and watched a bunch of her. I've never gone and watched a bunch of her fights like back to back in a row, and she doesn't fight like super actively. At least she hasn't the last so many years, right? So for me to kind of notice that and remember, um, yeah, would have been a lot harder, but it's very clear after he points that out. So Jamie says we have a meme for this, but I forgot. Of course, of course. So anyway, UFC Vegas 66, Route 66 to 2023, you could say. Will leave us with Cheyenne Vlismas. I don't know why I'm saying things all weird today. Corey versus Corey McKenna. So everybody's two favorite strawweights here in the chat are our longtime viewers, favorite fighters, along with Angela Hill, Valerie Lareda, who's not a fighter anymore, so I guess she doesn't count. But this is what we got. The War Princess versus Poppins. Identical records at 7-2. 27 years old versus 23. 5'3", 5'3". In the height is the same. And then reach advantage for Vlismas, 63 to 58.5. Incredibly short arms for Little Miss McKenna. Her and Molly are a little bit T-Rex territory there. But, excuse me. Yawn attack. On the odds, we have Vlismas as the minus 180 favorite to the plus 155 underdog. McKenna looking to get back on a win streak after suffering her first UFC loss there to Elise Reed. Split decision, which that was kind of funny. I think that was a fairly clear one from what I remember. And then Vlismas looking to continue her winning ways after the GDP head kick and quite a ridiculous one while it lasted. And then the Mallory Martin performance over a year ago now. So it has been quite a while since we saw Cheyenne. We'll see if the layoff affects her at all. I'm not positive on this. I think she may have been bouncing around from gyms and whatnot recently or what have you. But I don't know if she's still with Fortis, despite what it says right here. But I think that it's kind of interesting seeing these odds because I think, just from like that outside perspective, kind of glancing over this matchup, Corey McKenna still has a whole lot to prove. At 23 years old, she did look very good. Very good. A great rebound win against Miranda Granger after the loss the last time out. But Granger obviously has not lived up to any of the hopes that we had for her maybe getting into the UFC. And she's definitely out of it now, I would assume. I don't remember seeing anything specifically, but got a Von Flue choke, which I love me a good Von Flue choke always, with the first one from a woman in the UFC, which I would not have predicted her to be that person. Would have thought it'd be Kanako, but Kanako, needs to come back. First of all, if she's going to be hitting any Von Flue, she's got to be fighting, as she already has 2 on her record. But Corey McKenna scores some history there. That was a good deal, good win in that regard. Maybe not the best competition, but a good win. And Vlismas, I think, has shown to be a little bit more well-rounded, has obviously struggled in some certain positions. I mean, you want to talk about the big weapons from earlier. I mean, the Montserrat Ruiz one, Montserrat with the wonderful head and arm throw that completely shut down Vlismas entirely. That was the big problem in that fight for her. But, if you can't defend it, that's on you. So McKenna, continue to train with Team Alpha Male as well, working on the wrestling always. I think it will be best for her to try and out-grapple Cheyenne, really smother her, put the pressure on, make it hard for her to breathe, try and maybe pull off another submission. Whereas, Vlismas, relatively active striker, puncher, throws a decent amount of volume, throws better, and should be able to connect better than McKenna, just with most of the things that she's trying to throw at her. But it'll have to be off the back foot, because I imagine McKenna will be kind of chasing her down, kind of similar to how the Elise Reed fight went. I can see it looking pretty similar to that, honestly. But when it does go to the ground is where it will be probably the most interesting. But yeah, it's hard to say though with Vlismas being out for as long as she has, and the activity is definitely in favor of McKenna here. Might not be a factor at all. I mean, just a year. It seems like people these days have kind of, the ring rust myth has gotten more and more mythical, I think, as time has gone on in MMA. Depending on the gap, of course. Like if it's over a year and a half, I think is when there might be a problem. 2 years, probably for sure. But I think 1 people have not looked too bad from. It always depends, of course. It always does. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see. But I keep forgetting to do this. But the fan predictions, because there's so many on Tapology, we got 1,079 predictions here. It's interesting to see this because the odds makers, right? The odds are favoring Vlismas to win. It's close. It's very close. But, and this is pretty close too, but 57% are favoring McKenna to get the job done. So there you have that. And 6% KO predictions, which is more than the 2% by McKenna. That would be definitely a surprise. 13 by submission. So look at that. People feel confident about it. I can agree with that. I think if we are to see a finish, I mean, if this is pretty fair, if we're to see a finish in either method there, it would be KO favors Vlismas, and then submission for McKenna for sure. And then decision, that's kind of whatever. But yeah, I think it should be a relatively fair competitive one. It'll probably depend a lot, I think, on what's going on with Cheyenne, honestly. Like I said, the elements of having not fought in a while and what have you. So for a fight, though, and we're going to do our ratings now, which, I mean, I don't know, you guys. I don't remember who said that. Was it Jin? Rating the fights, like for the previews. I don't know if that actually makes sense, because I'll have already, in theory, rated them for the news portion, right? So maybe it doesn't make sense to do it right now, but I didn't give a rating on this one, since if we started out this way, doing the rating system, it'll only be a news thing, because then we'll just give 2 ratings out for the same thing, right? I guess we could see how my mind changes on fight week and whatnot, as opposed to when the news broke. But I don't know, it seems kind of pointless. Either way, for this one, it's like, this fight's like a 3 for me, maybe. Like I don't have a whole lot of interest in it. I'm curious to see if Vlismas can continue to make some improvements off the Mallory Martin win, which I thought she looked pretty good in, from what I remember. Again, it's been a year now, which is crazy. But yeah, and I mean, McKenna's still growing too. So I mean, there's just still a lot to learn about both of these fighters, both of these prospects. Maybe more with McKenna, clearly, because she's a little bit younger. But they have the same exact amount of fights so far. But yeah, it just it's not the best fight for us to close out on in the UFC. But I think I don't know. Maybe I'll go 4. I'll be a little bit generous there, but I think it's below a 5. But yeah, I slightly lean towards Cheyenne being, if she can come in, how we've seen her, at least if you look at the last performance, right? If she can avoid the pressure and, grappling kind of pace pressure that is going to be put on her by McKenna, I think she shouldn't have too much trouble. But yeah, we will see. As Jin says, a key fight in the strawweight division that people are excited for. How about that? So, Karen, good to see you. Why was there no chat last week? Because nobody showed up, Karen. I mean, I started early. That's why there was no chat. But yeah, I that was very last second, so it screwed everything up. But yeah. Ghost says Cheyenne is afraid of the scarf hold, and Corey can't defend a right hand. So who knows what will happen? Yeah, very, very particular stuff there. Yeah. As let's see, Rio says, to counter your point about ring rust pre-UFC 275, a lot of MMA media that Joanna was going to finish Whaley in the rematch, but then they backtracked and said rust when they saw Whaley dominate. I don't know about all that stuff. I don't remember seeing too many predictions there, but Joanna, I mean, going in, I think that was a 2-year layoff when she went in, so that was kind of one of those cases where I don't think she looked rusty, but going in, that was a fair thing to bring up. And I probably did. If we went back and watched that episode, I probably mentioned that. Jin said after the fight. Okay, that's much better. All right, I like that. Yeah. Like out of 5 stars or the matchup out of 10. Yeah, I think 10's a perfect kind of range. But okay, yeah, after the fight happens, that's good. So we can do that. I like that better because it doesn't make sense to do it twice beforehand, but afterward. That's fair. Yeah, rating system is good. But all right, look at that. Pretty productive stuff. But that's UFC Vegas 66, you guys. I mean, that's just that. That is what it is. So I honestly, I'm not too sure what else is on the card besides Strickland and Cannonier. Yeah. So is what it is. Before a little break here. Which, like I said, off the top, I think next week we'll have a full-on break. The only show we have left for the year will be Rising 40 after this one. So that'll be fun. But then there's even only one fight there, which is a great one. The big rematch between Sakizawa and Siwoo Park. So very, 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 very much looking forward to it. Hard to go out with a better one than that one to decide the female fighter of the year. But yeah, I mean, that's the show, you guys. Good timing here. Good to have you all back. I'm sorry again that I screwed up last week. I was very lonely. It was a very quick 44-minute show. Back to our usual kind of, at least over the hour mark, but under that 30. So that's good and nice and all. But thanks so much for tuning in, everyone. And thanks to the new people who showed up. Had some new faces in here, even the ones that we had to get rid of. But if you like the show and like the coverage, just from everything I'm doing and that we're doing over at WMMAnia.com, get on over there. Check things out. Check out the articles, the stories. Don't forget to follow us on all the platforms. Like the stuff, share the stuff, subscribe to the stuff. Notification bell availability here on YouTube, whether it's on the episode specifically or for the channel overall. I recommend hitting the channel one because I remember seeing in the comments last week that some people weren't notified when it did go live. And it might have been, I don't know, something with the video screwing up. So do the channel notifications if that's a thing. I think it should be. I still don't even fully know. But either way, we try to stick to our 12 p.m. Pacific time on Tuesdays anyway, as best as we can, unless crazy things come up in my life and schedule. So there you have it. That's good to know right there. But yeah, you guys, you follow me at DrakeRiggs_ on Twitter and Instagram if you would so like. But as for shameless plugs, real quick too, before we send us on the way, I did speak to Mung Bo after her big 24-second victory over Jenilyn Olsen at 164. Was that 2 weeks ago as well, or was that? Yeah, that was 2 weeks ago. Now my timeline's all mixed up. But good stuff chatting with Mung Bo, of course. Talked about her training at Bung Tao and rooming with Weili, her old rival, old past opponent from way back when they started in MMA. So that was fun. And then the very interesting weight and hydration test shenanigans that she went through, costing her 20% of her purse and that big $50,000 bonus. So that sucks, but she's always in good spirits. And we had a wild Wu Yanan appearance. She bombed us at the end there and took over for the tattoo talk. So that was a good one. It's always good fun with Mung Bo. And then, yeah, Broad Horizon episode 22 to close out the year. Hey, 22 for 22. How perfect is that? I didn't even think about that till just this second. That is going to be coming before Rise at 40, of course, very soon. Production is underway. Feel free to get in any questions for that show if you would like over on my tweet, or you can DM me directly. Questions for myself or Shingo about Rise and things and whatnot. Whatever you want to ask, really. So it's all here at MMA Mania. So we appreciate you so much for tuning in, you guys. And I think we'll leave it off there. Until next Tuesday, stay safe, stay sane, enjoy the last UFC card of the week, of the year. My goodness. Yeah, I can't even comprehend that 2022 is already about over. But it is for the UFC. So enjoy it until they're back on January 14th. So, but I'll be back next week, you guys. And I hope to see you there. So stay safe and stay sane, everybody.